4 financial infrastructure projects are reaching operational maturity. Artificial intelligence, biometric identification, central bank digital currency, and digital compliance layers are converging into a single interlocking grid. The A and B components function as intelligence and access gating. AI drives predictive decisioning, while biometric ID anchors data to a physical person. The C and D nodes provide settlement and programmable enforcement. CBDC allows transaction-level tracking, while the compliance layer permits administrators to restrict individual transactions in near real time. This ABCD architecture has moved from theoretical white papers into consumer-facing deployment. Countries and currency unions representing over 98% of global GDP are now exploring these integrated systems. Policy literature from institutions like the IMF tends to treat these technologies in isolation. Their current frameworks operate on the assumption that if the technical design is efficient, the population will simply adopt it. Within this logic, non-participation is viewed as a minor design flaw, something to be optimized away through better user experience or incentives, rather than a deliberate sociological response. However, the integrated ABCD architecture functions as a comprehensive mandate regime. It removes the historical possibility of pseudonymous activity and alters the underlying relationship between the citizen and the state. Research suggests imposing this kind of comprehensive mandate triggers the formation of structured, parallel financial ecosystems. Failing to account for this predictable human friction creates an analytical blind spot. The resistance is not a glitch, it is an inevitable reaction to the architecture's design. The ABCD architecture integrates capabilities that were previously separate. AI-augmented surveillance provides absolute biometric gating of economic access and transaction-level traceability that exceeds any historical network. This surveillance is paired with absolute enforcement. Programmable money primitives allow an administering authority to selectively reverse or freeze transactions based on real-time compliance data. While the tools are new, the sociological reaction to a top-down mandate follows a predictable path. When a population encounters a rigid barrier, they divide. We see this in the 1933 U.S. gold confiscation. Executive Order 6102 was a financial mandate that immediately triggered systematic evasion and the emergence of parallel markets. The 2016 Indian demonetization follows the same pattern. A sudden mandate created immediate systemic friction and forced a large percentage of the population into informal, parallel structures. The historical record suggests that universal participation is a myth. Comprehensive mandates act as a catalyst for structural refusal, splitting the population into distinct behavioral groups. We can map the resulting equilibrium using a framework called the population stack. The first tier is the participating majority. These users allocate toward the system for its convenience, regulatory alignment, or an endorsement of the architecture's goals. At the opposite extreme is the resistant remnant. This group declines participation entirely, exiting to parallel, off-grid arrangements based on tangible assets and physical networks. The embedded remnant occupies the space between. They functionally comply on the surface, while utilizing administrative invisibility to maintain a hidden parallel culture. Finally, we see disenchanted dissenters, former enthusiasts who have identified a gap between the system's promises and its operational reality and are now moving toward defection. This stack is not static. A capture and decay dynamic exists where off-grid systems are progressively absorbed into the regulated perimeter, forcing some users back into the participating majority. The result is a dynamic, circulating ecosystem where populations constantly migrate between these 4 tiers based on the system's design. This migration is mapped through the architecture-population coupling matrix, which shows how specific design choices determine the size of the opposition. The x-axis identifies catalytic design choices, the pace of the rollout, the depth of AML tracking, and whether biometric enrollment can be reversed. These choices create a feedback loop. Dialing up the intensity of programmable value conditioning causes a proportional expansion of the resistant remnant tier. This expansion creates a reverse constraint. A large resistant remnant acts as a political limit, restricting the system's ability to further intensify its mandates. This leads to the architecture-population equilibrium selection thesis. The finite state of the financial world is selected jointly by policy choices and population responses. When we zoom out to the macro level, we see the end state of the global financial system through three bifurcation theses. The first is population bifurcation. The global populace will sort into a participating majority and a persistent, heterogeneous minority of non-participants. The second is system bifurcation. This population split necessitates the emergence of off-grid financial institutions, or OGFIs, running on tangible assets and reputation-based credit. The third is trajectory bifurcation. Mobility between these two systems will be strictly bounded and structured, rather than random. The global economy converges on a two-tiered configuration, the expected outcome of current central bank trajectories. For institutional policymakers, this means population response is a primary design variable that must be mapped at the genesis stage. For those building parallel systems, the window to establish off-grid infrastructure is constrained to this early deployment phase. As mandates intensify, the regulatory perimeter will narrow, restricting the acquisition of the physical assets and analog substrates required for an off-grid system to function. The architectural choices being made right now establish the path-dependent constraints that will define the relationship between the financial system and its participants.